Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The New York Knicks are using the NBA Cup to ramp up their new team into playoff form. The Big 12 may be getting overlooked in the college football playoff rankings, and the Bears botched the Matt Eberflus firing. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
More NBA Cup action. The venerable NBA Cup. The New York Knicks take down the Orlando Magic 121-106. Alex Wolf from Locked On Knicks joins me now. And Alex, the NBA Cup play, I think has made fans go, okay, that the courts, I don't know how we feel about the courts, but it has changed the intensity of some of these early season matchups. This is a potential playoff preview. This is two teams fighting for playoff positioning. It feels like these games do mean more thanks to the Cup.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, it's kind of fun too to see teams giving it their all right through the final buzzer in the name of point differential and stuff. Didn't really get to see this from the Knicks perspective this year, but like last year, I have fond memories of them running up the score on the Charlotte Hornets, which normally is enough to get you a punch in the mouth, but because of the rules that were in place was just, like, oh, they're just trying to make the NBA Cup tournament. So yeah, that part's pretty cool. I mean, it definitely brings some intensity. I mean, I'm glad to see that the Knicks really got up for this one. They've been having to sort of prove themselves lately that they can actually hang with playoff caliber teams. And, I think that they've done a good job of kind of beating the easier teams on their schedule so far this year, or teams that have been revealed to be easier teams like the Sixers or whatever. But they were kind of struggling early on with these higher caliber teams, higher caliber defenses. And the Magic, I think their fatal flaw is that 3-point shooting, which was exposed. Like, one thing you can generally get against the Tibbs defense is a number of open threes. It's just if you cash them or not. And this was not a team that was ready to cash on those open threes tonight. And thus, the Knicks really got to run away with this one pretty early and have a pretty comfortable game where they shot fantastic. Everybody got involved. They had all 5 starters in double figures again. Josh Hart notches another triple-double. Jalen Brunson, very leisurely, scored 21 points. Cat, very not so leisurely, scored 23 and almost got in a fight with Mo Wagner 4 times. It was a real blast. It was a fun game.
What do you make of this Knicks team through 21 games? 13-8 is not exactly something to write home about. This was supposed to be one of the co-favorites in the Eastern Conference with the Celtics, with the Sixers, LOL. But after the Mikal Bridges trade, this was supposed, and then the Karl Anthony Towns trade, they seemed loaded for bear. Is this just a team with some new pieces trying to figure it out, or is there something else going on here? Yeah, no, I think they're just trying to figure it out. I mean, I've been preaching patience on Locked On Knicks plenty this season too. I think if you look back at teams that have had this amount of upheaval in past seasons, I mean, dating all the way back to it's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of teams that have gone through this. A lot of teams that have gone through the same sort of growing pains, like even the LeBron Heat teams, those are the ones that I keep bringing up where they were the prohibitive favorite to win every championship after they came together, and they won 2 out of 4 eventually, and they appeared in all those finals. And, they were a 500 really team through 24 games that first season. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a lot of people were ready to give up hope on that too. I think this Knicks team is figuring it out. The offense is elite already. You don't have to touch that really at all. The defense is just what needs to come around. And, I think it's guys learning their roles. It's getting Mikal Bridges in a little more of a defensive mindset than I think what he's been in the last couple of years, where he had to be kind of an alpha scorer and, doing a little more on the offensive end than the defensive end. But also, I mean, it shouldn't be overlooked. They've been without 2 very key big man rotation pieces to start this season with basically pressure. Their whole big man rotation, right? Yeah, basically their whole big man rotation outside of Cat. Jericho Sims was not supposed to get minutes, but they're waiting on Precious Achiuwa and Mitchell Robinson to come back, which will give them a lot of interior defensive help, which they'll need. Also, we saw with Minnesota, the Cat could play the 4. So there's a lot to be excited about. I think with
what this team can still become, but also how they're gelling right now. And wins like this one against a team that was above them in the standings kind of show that they're maybe ready to start turning the corner into elite already.
Is having something like the NBA Cup, not to really, cape for the league here, but for the Knicks who are, as you mentioned, trying to figure this all out, is it particularly useful, do you think, to have a little extra stake for this team to be searching for as they're trying to get this? Like, let's have some games early on that matter. So we can't just say, well, these games don't matter until March, April, May, because by March, April, May, you have to be ready to go.
Yeah, I would say maybe.
That's okay. It's okay.
I would say maybe if it wasn't a Tibbs team, but I mean, he treats a regular season, game 32 matchup against the Wizards like it's the game 7 of the playoffs,
right.
And like
he certainly handles his rotations that way.
Exactly. Like he's not going to give these guys rest no matter what. Like if they're not playing well, and if there's any chance that they can like get back in a game, like unless they're down by like 30, with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, he leaves those starters out there. So like they're incentivized to like play well and figure this out if they want to have the occasional night where they can sit down with 8 minutes left in the game like today. That's kind of what they're playing for on any given night. So for some teams maybe, but like I said, I don't know if the Knicks necessarily need the extra incentive, but maybe in the long run, if they make it to the final and say win the final, maybe that gives them that little jolt of confidence of like, hey, we've arrived, like we've got this, like we could potentially make a run towards the playoffs now and win 60-something% of our games and go crazy for the rest of the season. Or I don't know, my greatest fear is that something catastrophic happens in what is effectively an 83rd regular season game off the map. That's like all my brain goes to as a Knicks fan. So I'm not sure. We'll see when we get there. I guess we got to see if they make it to the final first to get to that. But as of right now, they definitely seem to be getting up for these NBA Cup games, which is evidenced by the fact that they won all 4 of them, even if they scraped by against the Hornets. But they definitely are enjoying this format, I think.
You can stay up to date all year on the New York Knicks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Knicks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Big 12 is being overlooked in college football. Before we get to that, LeBron's 82-game goal may not totally be up to him. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. You can always turn a profit on a game between 2 sub-500 teams if you want. The Pacers head to Brooklyn to take on the Nets and are slight favorites. FanDuel has Indiana laying 2 points for tonight's tilt, if you want to call it that. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. LeBron James has said he wants to play all 82 games this year. LA Lakers coach JJ Redick said he was unsure whether the goal is sustainable this season, saying, I don't know that it's in the best interest of him and us if he does that, but if he's feeling well and feeling good, then he should play. But we obviously want to manage that as best we can. James went 0 for 4 on 3-pointers against the Wolves, extending his slump to 0 for 19 from deep in the last 4 games. That's the worst he shot from 3 since the 2003-2004 season. LeBron's response, it's something I ain't discussing right now. And as inconceivable as the future may seem, the Dodgers are trying to fill up the expenditures column for years. Contracts for Blake Snell and Tommy Edman increased LA's obligations for deferred payments to pay more than $1 billion owed to 7 players from 2028 to 2046. Snell's $182 million contract announced Saturday includes $66 million in deferred money payable to the pitcher through July 1, 2046. We got new college football playoff rankings. Oregon still at number 1, Texas at number 2, much to the chagrin of Big 12 fans. Remember Texas? Big 12 fans? Yeah, you probably do. You have to scroll down quite a ways down the list to find a Big 12 team. We have Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12, who's joining me now. And Drake, this is a once proud conference that is being passed over here. What is what is the reaction right now from Big 12 Nation?
Yeah, Big 12 fans aren't happy. And reason being, a team like a BYU who is sitting at 2 ranked wins, a team like a BYU who is got 8 wins against Power 4s is ranked behind South Carolina, who's got 6 wins against Power 4 teams. We're talking about teams in the SEC that are 9-3, have less wins than teams like a BYU or an Arizona State or an Iowa State in the Big 12, who are getting the benefit of the doubt. And reason being money. Exposure, brand. If you put a question mark, Peter, next to these teams and say, who is this based on resume, you're going to put even a BYU in the conversation for an at-large. But instead, what the committee is doing here is leaving a BYU outside of the top 15, and it's kind of twofold. One, it keeps the Big 12 out of the college football playoff with more than one, their automatic bid. And two, it makes SMU's loss to BYU look even worse than if the Cougars were ranked higher. What this does is it takes SMU, BYU, a school like even a Miami out of the ACC, and it says the brand bias for the SEC is going to be there. We've accepted that. The committee has accepted that. They're going to keep pushing that, and as long as that equates to money in the pocket of these committee members, it will continue. Peter, the guy who runs the whole show, the director of this committee, is the athletic director at Michigan. And there are millions upon millions of dollars that are poured into the Big Ten based on the amount of Big Ten teams that get into the college football playoff. Where does that money go? Into the pockets of a good portion of these college football playoff committee members. They are insider trading right now. They have the fate of their own jobs, of their universities, of their football programs on the line, and they can directly benefit their leagues by making decisions like this. They keep the Big 12 by and large out, the ACC by and large out, and Alabama, who's 9-3, in. It's a travesty to what college football should be in evening the playing field and giving everyone a chance equally.
I thought you were going to go The Rock there for a minute with the millions and the million, but you didn't do it. You didn't quite get there. That's okay. It is conspicuous, especially if you're a Big 12 fan. You're going, okay, 16 Iowa State, 18 BYU, and then the teams directly in front of them with same records or
worse records.
In the case of BYU. And you mentioned the resume part of this. Is this a Big 12 branding problem? Like, is this we need to see more time with these teams?
Whoa, Peter, what do you mean branding problem? Neo is performing at the Big 12 halftime show, all right? The commissioner, Brett Yormark, has addressed the branding problem. He brought Nelly last year and Neo this year. Yes, of course, that's a big part of this, is where the Big 12 sits.
I love it as a 37-year-old man.
I've got to be honest with you. Nelly wasn't very good. We'll see how Neo performs when I'm there this Saturday at AT&T Stadium. This is a branding issue for sure, but I do not think it's a Big 12 branding issue. Instead, it's an individual team branding issue. Look at this. So Shehan Jayarasha of CBS Sports tweets, BYU's 10-2 with the number 44 strength of schedule and a road win against the ACC regular season champion. Clemson, number 53 strength of schedule, 9-3. They've lost more games than BYU, and they haven't beaten SMU, the regular season champion. They're ranked ahead of BYU. So again, you put the question mark and make it a little box and give the resume, and the Big 12's there. It's the brand that is the issue. But here's why it's the individual brands. Peter, 15 years ago, BYU was in the doldrums of college football, but so was Clemson. They made less revenue from football in 2009 than Bowling Green. That's how bad Clemson was. Here's what they did. They won. They won at the highest level, and they won consistently. Kansas State, no different. BYU, no different. Arizona State. If one of those schools from the Big 12 takes a 15-year run where they go to 4 or 5 college football playoffs and win 2 of them, they're the new Clemson. Look at Miami. 2005, if Miami's 10-2, they're in the playoff easily. They're the Hurricanes, the mighty Hurricanes. Today, they're out because brands change. They ebb and flow, especially outside of the SEC and outside of a Michigan or Ohio State. So for the Big 12, you can tout the conference all you want, but you need one team that says, look, we're here to stay. And this league doesn't have that. And so until you get it, you don't get the resume gets you in. It's still going to be the logo, the conference logo, that patch on your chest that helps you get into the 12.
You can stay up to date all year on the Big 12 by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Big 12 on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Your Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Bears botched the Matt Eberflus firing. It was probably time the Bears made a move with their head coach. In fact, it may have been past time to make that call, as Locked On NFL host Tony Wiggins and Kevin Ostreicher discussed.
Here we go, man. You can do the right thing and you can do the right thing the wrong way. For weeks, all of us have been talking about, okay, we've been talking about this by multiple coaches. When are they going to fire this guy? Like Eberflus in Chicago, Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. I'm sure Jacksonville people will say there is no wrong way to fire Doug Peterson. However, sometimes you can do the right thing and just do it the wrong way. I think by rolling him out there, letting him go to the press conference, sort of the same way Robert Saleh was, I think the Bears kind of messed up.
Yeah. And honestly, Wig, this is something that probably should have happened in the offseason. And, you bring in a guy in Caleb Williams and, you see a lot of success stories with players and rookie quarterbacks, with coaches, rookie coaches. Like, you pair those two together and it works. But Eberflus being more of a defensive guy and, Caleb Williams being this all-world talent type player. And the Bears were not like they were great with Matt Eberflus to begin with. And so we saw that across the league a lot, Wig, where it was like teams held on to coaches they had no business holding on to. You could maybe even argue in Jacksonville, did they hold on to Doug Peterson a little too long? So it feels like that's a trend throughout the NFL. But it just sets these young quarterbacks back because now you're going to have to learn a new system, whether it is Kingsbury. I know that's the whole, they're going to get Kingsbury in with Caleb and do that pairing. But still, it's like it's your second coach in 2 years, your second offensive system in 2 years. And that can be tough where, like, for a guy like a Jaden Daniels, yeah, maybe he'll lose his offensive coordinator, but at least the foundation is still there. So it's tough because there's so many things that go into this, but it was the right decision, just made far too late.
The move with Matt Eberflus was always to do it in the offseason. It always, and I'm not talking about 2025. I'm not talking about 6 weeks from now. I'm talking about last January. When you're going to get the number 1 overall pick, when you're going to get a chance at a generational, by some people's accounting, talent. You cannot put a young quarterback in a position where you're going to clean house potentially in year 1. The stability is essential to his development. And even in a best case scenario, Matt Eberflus brings in Shane Waldron. Okay, that was a mistake, clearly. But even if it works, let's say, and Caleb Williams has the Jaden Daniels season, let's say, Shane Waldron may be in line to get a head coaching job. Cliff Kingsbury certainly might be. In fact, Cliff Kingsbury might be the next Chicago Bears head coach. The thing you have to do with a young quarterback is set him up for success. The best way to do that is to have continuity. The best way to do that is to have a play calling head coach on the offensive side so that there is no chance he goes anywhere. If you make the right hire, you have the foundation of your team for a decade or more. The original sin was keeping Matt Eberflus last offseason rather than trying to find someone that is exactly the kind of coach they're going to try and hire now when there are fewer quality candidates to do that with. Classic Bears. And finally, Mike Holmgren was chosen as the coaching finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025 on Tuesday. This is past due. We don't get Super Bowl winner John Gruden without Mike Holmgren. We don't get multi-Super Bowl winner Andy Reid without Mike Holmgren. Steve Mariucci from the Holmgren tree. It is past time for Mike Holmgren to be in the Hall of Fame. And there are coaches who have gotten in the last couple of years who did not deserve to be in. Bill Cowher, for example, before Mike Holmgren. Mike Holmgren is not on a network every Sunday talking about the games. Reveals a flaw in the system. Holmgren was the better coach, the more influential coach. And yet he's had to wait his turn. One last thing I'll add. Sterling Sharp, also from that era, played for Mike Holmgren. He already also deserved to be in. I hope he gets in. He's a finalist, but he's got to make it. He is an all-time great. And had he not gotten hurt, we'd be talking about him in the hushed tones that we use for Calvin Johnson and Julio Jones and some of the best receivers we've seen in the last 30 years. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, what does Green Bay have to do to overcome Detroit? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.